Morning, kids. I wanted to talk just a little bit about a couple of things that seemed to create a little bit of confusion last week in your forum posts. And those are the ideas of theme and point of view. It seemed like some folks were not entirely getting hold of the specialized way in which those terms are used by literary critics, which we are all becoming. And that's an easy confusion to make because those words are used less precisely out in the real world and more precisely in the world of the trained reader or the literary critic. So when a literary critic says theme or point of view, they mean a certain specific technique which a reader, if you know about it, can observe and then talk about and use to penetrate into the depths of a story and come to greater understanding. So let me talk about theme first. Some of you said that theme in Desiree's Baby, for instance, the theme is racism. Well, that's not the theme, that's the subject. The subject of a story is what the story is about. So the story is about racism. Theme to a critic of literature is some comment about the subject. So you might say the theme of Desiree's Baby is what racism does to people, or that racism brings out people's worst qualities, or that racism can be hidden and not revealed until some crisis comes along. Theme could be any of a number of things, but theme and subject are not the same thing. So the subject of the story is racism. The theme is what you see it commenting upon racism. Okay, so if you had those two things confused, some of you said the theme is racism, and that's not the theme. The subject is racism. Okay. The other thing is point of view. Point of view is used sloppily out in the other world, and we use it imprecisely. Like, for instance, I can say, my point of view on global warming is blah, blah, blah. And you can take that to mean my opinion on global warming is blah, blah, blah. So out there in the non-specific world, point of view and opinion could be pretty much the same thing. For a critic of literature or a trained reader, point of view is a very specific narrative device, and it has to do with where the narrator is standing, who the narrator is, and how the story is reported. And you find that in the pronouns, the overall use of pronouns in the story. Now, it's someone asked a really good question in the forum or in email last week sometime, and I wanted to answer the question here because it was a very good one. There may be appearances in third person of first person because it's dialogue. Let me give you an example. If you look on page 254 of your textbook, Catherine Ann Porter's story called The Grave, and you start scanning down the page and you see the pronouns. Look at the third paragraph. They peered into pits. Miranda leaped into the pit, third person. He waved a closed hand at her, third person, and so forth. So the overall point of view or narrative device, I use point of view and narration interchangeably, although they're not quite precisely the same thing. The point of view of this story is third person because it uses third person pronouns. Now, if you flip over to the middle of page 255, the next page, you do see some first person pronouns. If you look about halfway down the page, you see some dialogue because it's got the quotation marks around it. I'd just as soon, said Miranda, only like this we walk around more. Well, there's a first person pronoun, the pronoun I, first person. But what's going on there is that is not first person narration. That is the third person narrator reporting what a character has said, and the narrator wants to give it a feeling of authenticity, so they report it as actual dialogue. And so you might think that that's first-person narration, but it isn't. It's third-person narration if you read over the whole story, you'll see in the pronouns the story is being told from some external point of view by someone who is, in a sense, observing the story. Now, of course, this is a device. No one observed the story. Catherine Porter wrote the story and makes it up. But the narrative device is third person. Okay? Then I'm going to flip over to Eudora Welty's little story, if I can find it real quick. It's called Why I Live at the P.O. It's on page 431 of your textbook. Why I Live at the P.O. If you notice right off the bat, I was getting along fine. I went with Mr. Whitaker. Everything is reported in first person. Look halfway down the next page. I was taken by surprise, and so forth and so on. As soon as I was out of the room, this happens. So the overall narrative device or point of view is I, so it's a person in the story because they're talking about themselves and saying I. So that's first person narration. So the way you tell the narrative device or the point of view of the story is look at the overwhelming majority of the pronouns. They're either third person, and we won't worry about omniscient or limited right now, or they're first person. Now both of these things, theme and especially point of view, are important in recognizing them because they help us make other choices that are really more important about protagonists and how the story is structured and what we're supposed to get out of a story and how we view a story and how we understand what the story is telling us is dependent in some part on noticing the point of view, and then there are deeper and more critical things that are dependent upon noticing the point of view that are more important. So I hope that clears it up. If there was a little confusion, just remember these literary terms that we're using are literary terms. They're used in a specific technical way, and a trained reader knows those words and knows what they mean and knows how to use them. Now, you're going to see the same words used in the general population, less precisely, like opinion, point of view, same thing, if you're just talking. But in literature and understanding literature, point of view is something very specific. That's a specific literary technique. So I hope that clears up the confusion. I just wanted to be sure that we're all kind of have a good foundation on those things before we move on to the next step. All right, hope you're having a good day. I'll talk to you soon. Bye.